So Eleanor gave her first sacrament meeting talk today. And it was really good. It was just about a minute or so long, and she went up there and she essentially said, "Hi, I'm Eleanor. I am scared to be here. I'm scared that I'm gonna say something silly and that people will make fun of me. But I'm up here because the bishopric and my parents asked me to be up here, and I'm trying to do it even though it's hard and scary. I was asked to talk about being a disciple of Christ, and as I was preparing, I really liked this verse in where Mormon in the book of 3rd Nephi says, "I'm a disciple of Christ, the Son of God, and I've been sent to declare his word among his people, that they may have everlasting life." And I feel like I too am a disciple of Jesus Christ, and I've been sent to declare his word to his people, and to you, that you can have everlasting life. And even though it's hard and it's scary, I'm trying to do it. And I invite you to try to be a disciple of Jesus Christ even when it's hard and scary for you. And that was essentially her talk, and it was a really good talk. It was very touching, very honest, and yeah, and it was really good. It was definitely the highlight of the sacrament meeting for me. In addition to the sacrament, as far as other things in the sacrament meeting went, we sang "Let the Holy Spirit Guide" for the opening hymn. Sister Shar Mills gave the opening prayer, and something she asked was that those who listen and those who speak will increase in testimony, and I think that prayer was answered, at least for me and hopefully for Eleanor. Eleanor then gave her talk. Something that I noticed too is that the hymnals were back. During COVID, they took the hymnals away. So that I assume so that people weren't touching the same book or something like that, but they put the hymnals back, and that was the first time we've had the hymnals back. So that's actually a lot more convenient to sing the hymns with hymnals. After Eleanor spoke, a senior in high school, a Lindsay girl, I don't know her first name, spoke. She talked about how exercising faith is hard. She talked about a young woman leader that she had who essentially said that, you know what, I have doubts, I have things I don't understand, but I believe in Jesus Christ, and I'm going to exercise faith in Jesus Christ, and even though I have doubts, I'm going to choose to believe, and how that was a meaningful thing for her. And she talked about how you don't need to have perfect faith, but you should strive to have growing faith. Even if it's not perfect, it should be growing, and that it's not a competition to see who has the best faith. It's okay if you have your faith wherever you're at, in Jesus Christ. We sang a intermediate hymn of "We Are All Enlisted." It's a good song. And then Carson White spoke, and he talked about what stood up to me. He also spoke on faith. He talked about how faith is believing in stuff even if you don't have evidence to back it up, and how what stuck out to me is he said that other people don't have the responsibility to build your faith. That's something that falls on you. I guess how he said it isn't anyone else's job to build up your faith except yourself. So, and his talk was fairly short, and those were all the scheduled speakers. And so a member of the bishopric, all those talks were short, so a member of the bishopric came up and spoke. It was Brother Salmon, and he said that he was really touched by the speakers, especially Eleanor's talk. He said he was touched by her honesty and her willingness to get up there, even though it was scary, her faith, to get up there, even though it was scary. And he essentially reiterated lots of the principles that were in talk President Nelson gave on faith, and also in Joseph Smith's lectures on faith. So some of the principles he talked about were that how we use faith all the time to do pretty much everything that we do is based on the belief in something, some result of the action that we haven't seen yet. So whether it's giving a talk, whether it's, any kind of planning that we do, almost everything that we do is based on faith. We act with the belief that something will happen, even though it hasn't happened and we haven't seen that it happen yet. And he talked about how faith should be centered on the faith being centered on Jesus Christ means that our actions are centered on Jesus Christ, and that we must believe that God both exists and believe in his attributes as a being who is just and able to save us, and that without that, faith doesn't work. And how it helps us draw closer to God. He invited us to study the lectures on faith. He invited us to choose to believe in Jesus Christ. He quoted, I think, President Nelson, who said it takes faith to follow a prophet instead of pundits and popular opinion. So you have a good alliterative phrase there that he had in there. And he just talked about how faith often requires us to move out of our comfort zone. But in moving out of a comfort zone, you get power. And it was a good talk. But I definitely liked Eleanor's talk the best. So she did a really good job. And God helped her out. Then we sang How Wondrous and Great as a closing hymn. Laura Lee White gave the closing prayer, and she asked for help with challenges. That was a common theme in all of the talks, was just kind of this idea that we face challenges or things that are hard or things that are scary, and that God can help us through it. And that theme also popped up in the closing prayer too. For sacrament, we sang Behold the Great Redeemer Die, and the way sacrament's set up now is we have to wait for all of the young men to leave sitting with their families and go sit up by the sacrament table. And so there's prelude for a while before we started singing. And once we started singing, we were really on tune, and I don't know if it was because of that prelude, because the congregational hymns were just kind of normal for all the other hymns, but for the sacrament hymn, I felt like our congregation, like more people were singing, and in that it was more on tune, and I wonder if it's because of that prelude, or if it was just, I was noticing it more. But we did sacrament, and that was good. After sacrament, I spent like 5 minutes cleaning the bench, which I always do because my kids leave messes. They leave little toys and scraps of paper and breadcrumbs and things like that. A few people told me how well they thought Eleanor did. Like Brother Weiniger came up to me and said she did a great job, and Brother Crookston was touched by her talk as well. Then we had Elders Quorum. We talked about the President Oak's most recent General Conference talk about defending the Constitution, and he and the teacher was Brother Bennett, and I don't know how much I like Brother Bennett's style of teaching, but some things that did come up that I really appreciated is it was a good talk. It wasn't overly political, which is something you worry about because when you're talking about the Constitution. There wasn't any like Republicans are the best or Democrats are the best, and that's good. And President Oak's talk expressly said to avoid that kind of thing. But something that I really liked that happened is that he compared the Constitution to the Restoration, and he pointed out how the Constitution, was started off, and then it's been amended and changed and gotten better. And we believe that lots of those changes were inspired and great. Things like abolishing slavery and giving women the right to vote and things like that. but it changed in as much as people were ready for those changes and willing to support those changes. And he compared the restoration to that, that the Book of Mormon was translated and Joseph set up the church, but as the years have gone by, there have been changes in how the church works and changes in how we understand certain doctrines and things like that. And he compared it to that it's getting better or more perfect. We are progressing towards a millennium. And I like that there's kind of this incremental approach towards progress, kind of almost Hegelian, but he didn't use the word Hegelian, but this kind of incremental approach towards a better world, a more millennial world. And I think that when we think about the government, I don't think that the government's necessarily in the Constitution. I don't know if that's necessarily progressing towards an ideal world, but I do think that the restoration of the gospel is progressing towards the millennium, towards Christ's second coming. And I think that that's good. Another interesting point that came up is that in the millennium, the form of government is going to be a monarchy. Jesus Christ will be the king. And in as much as and so how much will the Constitution apply? And just kind of, there was some good testimonies of belief in the millennium.
Scissors?
So that's good. So I can go talk to Tobias now.
You find